Welcome into our seventh mini lesson. This one today is going to be about shadow work. So for our time, you might want to have a pen. It would be a really helpful thing, pen and paper. If you don't have one, you can grab that now. And if you're catching us on the replay, you can hit pause and run and grab one and then come on back. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about shadow work and what that is. And then we're just going to do a little brief exercise together to kind of get to shine a little light into the corners of your shadow, or at least a piece of your shadow. Shadow work has gotten to be quite the buzz phrase out in the interwebs and the world. People talk about shadow work all the time, and some people do know what it is, and other people don't. So it is a phrase that gets thrown around frequently. And its origins actually lie with Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst, and he really talked about shadow work as being, or shadow, as being these parts of ourselves that we reject. um, we might avoid them. We might push them back down when they start to come up. They are parts of ourselves that we might not really like, or we might feel revulsion about, which, believe it or not, most of us have those parts. You might be like, oh, I never feel that way about parts of myself. Well, I do. And I'm human and you're human. So I'm guessing at some point you have as well. But we all, and I truly believe we all have these parts that maybe we're not super fond of, or that we might not even be aware of, that come out in little situations where afterwards we're like feeling the shame coming up. And we're like, why is the shame coming up now? But it's because maybe we behaved badly and didn't recognize it in the moment. Anyway, shadow can actually cover quite a bit of territory, inner territory. And the reason that I include shadow work in the priestess path is because I believe that the more we get to know our shadow, the more we befriend our shadow, the more whole we become and the clearer channel we become for the work that we're doing. So, really, shadow work is a way to heal some parts of ourselves that we might be rejecting, or have wounding around, as well as allowing us to be, as we become more whole, as we become more integrated, perhaps is even a better word. We then are able to bring through information. We have an easier time tapping into energies. We might not get thrown off center quite so hard. And when our shadow pops up, we can be like, hey, I know who you are and I know why you're here. So that is why I include shadow work as part of the priestess path. And that's really just a little snapshot as to what shadow work is. Now, there's a lot of resources out there in the world that will help you to do shadow work if you're wanting to. There's books and journals and all kinds of stuff. Um, but I think some of the easiest ways to begin this work are to start to identify those parts. So, like I said, you're going to need a pen and paper, and we're just going to write down a couple of things here. So, to begin, I'd like you to go ahead and just close your eyes and take a couple deep breaths. Just really land in yourself if you're in a place where you can do that. You might even let out a big sigh, a little sound. Hmm. And then just taking a moment here to land in your body, perhaps feeling into your edges, noticing your clothing, the air on your skin, pressure in the places where your body is coming into contact with that which is supporting you. Letting your breath drop really deep into your belly here. And you might imagine that with every breath that you take and every expansion of your belly, every expansion of your rib cage, you're making a little more room inside for exploration, a little more space inside to begin to be able to shine the light into the corners and illuminate the shadow. So as you illuminate that shadow, you might let your mind's eye look around your inner realms and begin to see what are some of the things that show up when you think about shadow. Your shadow is about the inner workings. Your shadow is really about thoughts, feelings, behaviors. And maybe as you poke around, you find yourself able to give some of these parts names. And because we all have different shadows, we might have different names, different aspects. Because we all have different values, at least slightly, we're going to see those parts of ourselves through different lenses. And some shadows might feel very dark, while others are just gray areas. Take a big breath in. And as you exhale, you can let your eyes come open. And I invite you actually to reach for a pen and begin to jot down some of the names or qualities that you see in your shadows. And we'll just take a minute or so to do that here. And the thing about shadow is that it's really a balance, right? We can't just be all love and light. If we're love and lighting everything, we're doing spiritual bypassing all the time, and we're not actually looking at what's truly happening. We need both. We need the shadow and the light. So as you look at the list you're starting to write here, I invite you to maybe think about what might be the light qualities of these. And let me explain this in a different way. One of my shadow pieces is my rebel. I have a fierce rebel. She wants to blow shit up. Like, let's just burn it all down. Let's just go at it. Who needs this life that I'm living that, if it feels hard, just bail. Like, peace out. I'm going to go do something else. Leave it all behind. So she was kind of intense. She got me in a lot of trouble as a teenager. And I know what her job is. Her job is to help me not take stuff so freaking seriously. Her job is to help me escape when I get myself bound up in these knots of responsibility or I take on too much. Her job is to say, you don't need this. We can go. And yeah, maybe we can. We're not going to. That's not the right thing to do. She does when she shows up, remind me, you got yourself in a pickle. We got to figure out a different way around this. So when you look at what your shadow pieces are, or the ones that you're just starting to name here, because again, we all have many, even if you just have one on your list, what might be that shadow's job? What is the role that shadow is taking? And I'm going to give you one more example because um, One of my other shadow pieces is murderous rage. And so this is a little bit darker than my rebel because my rebel might want to burn it all down. My murderous rage wants to kill, literally. And I remember the first time I had this experience where I had my nervous system had gotten so far activated and I felt completely helpless. And I felt this feeling inside of myself of wanting to hurt someone. And it scared me, like scared me to my soul. I was like, this is not who I am. I immediately called for help and like I went and processed it in therapy. And this is many, many years ago. I think I was 21 at the time. But I went in and I was telling my therapist I had these feelings. It was, it was so intense and I don't want to be this person. And she's like, oh, you just had murderous rage. Like that matter of fact. It's like, oh, I just had murderous rage. I think I need to be committed. And she's like, did you do anything about it? And I said, well, I called for help. And she goes, okay, let's look at this. We are all, as humans, capable of feeling that level of rage. Now, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not, we are capable of feeling it. Now, what we do with that, what are the impulse versus the action, right? What is our body telling us to do? We are wired to be able to defend ourselves. We are wired to be able to fight back. And yes, some of us go into other places like freeze or flight instead of fight, but we all have the capability of experiencing this rage. So I recognize if that rage comes up, A, there's either something really deep getting triggered in me that's very, very old that is needing some care, or B, my nervous system has gotten so past my ability to regulate that the only way my body sees out is to fight it out. So I know that that murderous rage actually plays a role in helping me. I know that now. I don't like that feeling. I don't ever want to feel that. I do not want to be a person who has the ability to feel that, but I am. So what do I do with it? Because my values would never let me actually hurt someone. So I share this as another example because it's a little bit darker than just the rebel. It and it might give you a little bit of illumination on here's this thing about myself I really don't like. What is its job? What is its job? How is it serving me or trying to serve me? And as we start to work with shadow, that's really what we're doing. We're looking at these pieces that we might want to reject or deny exist, and we're discovering what their job is. They're part of us, they're wanting to help us. They might not have the best way of doing it. If you've ever seen that kids movie Inside Out, you'll know that some parts of ourselves, they make bad choices. It just they're too sad. They can't do a thing. In that movie, it's all feelings, right? So it's the anger wants to fly off the handle, and the sad wants to go curl up, or whatever it might be. Um, but we all have these parts, but they have a role to play, and that's the piece that I want you to walk away from this mini lesson with today. Is that whatever it is that you might be looking at as your shadow or the bad parts of yourself or the parts you might have shame about, they have a place. They have a place, they have a purpose. And the more you befriend them, the more integrated you become and the more whole you become. And the less you need all the love and light because you're like, yeah, I'm showing up with all the parts. Don't just need the love and light. So that is why shadow work is part of the priestess path. And that is why I bring you this mini lesson today to help you just start to kind of look at what shadow is for you. And you can go as shallow or as deep as you want with this. It doesn't have to be this deep dive into all this really painful wounding. You can start at the surface because, like I said, shadow has some gray area too. It's not just the dark shadow, there's also that more light gray shadow. Um, and I would also speak to some of that dark shadow has the spectrum, right? My murderous rage sometimes is just road rage. Sometimes I'm just like, that person is a jerk. What is wrong with them? And then I have to reel it in and go, please get where you're going safely and don't harm anyone in the process. But I'm aware of where that's coming from, even if I don't want to be the person who wants to flip people off on the road. And that's definitely the more gray area versus that like her. And they're all connected. So, so that is what I have for you today in this mini lesson. And now you know how human I am. So there you go. For one part of my humanness, I have many facets there too, but that's one of them. Um, and thank you for joining me. We will be coming back together again in a couple days, and we'll be shifting from this inner work realm where we've touched on the maiden mother crone and sacred sensuality and shadow work. We'll be moving from that into the tools section of these mini lessons. So our first tool, I believe, is divination, and we'll start there and we'll do a little exercise together and explore divination and some of the different types. Um, and we'll just keep tracking along for the remainder of these sessions, and you can keep taking a little view into the Priestess Path. If you were thinking about joining this cohort, we do begin on August 23rd, which is coming up in less than a month. And if you are already on the wait list, you might want to hop over to wisewomanwitchery.com and click on the Priestess Path and get your name on that wait list because you will get a coupon code to join for discount for this next cohort. So thank you for being here today. It was wonderful to see you. Take very good care of yourselves, your light selves, and your shadow selves. And I will hopefully see you again on Wednesday. Okay.